And welcome back to the show. We're talking with author Barry Moltz with his book Bounce, and we're talking about resiliency in people. And Barry, I'd like to continue off where we finished in our first segment. Can those with a lack of bounce, so to speak, or lack of resiliency, can they turn things around? Like if somebody who's really down in the dumps and really experienced some negative situations, can they turn things around? And can organizations do
that? I want to hope that they can, right? Because if we don't have hope, then what do we really have? Again, sometimes external forces, help people turn things around, right? I mean, sometimes, the market changes and people just find themselves again in the right place. So I think it can happen, but you can't really depend on others to do it for you.
So what are some examples? I think you gave a couple, actually, like the supporting structure that's around you, right? That's one way they can turn things around.
You have to get out of your current environment. So I know a lot of people, let's say that your business failed or you lost your job, and a lot of people just, stay to themselves at home and they continue to feel lousy about what happened about themselves. You have to get out and do something that's going to make you feel positive. So what I have found is go volunteer for an organization where you really feel your skills are going to make a difference. Go help out a friend in business. This is not for money. This is just helping people out so you feel, again, that you have value. Because I really believe, Alex, that we create our own, to a certain extent, we create our own realities. If you continue to think of yourself as a failure, you will be a failure in the future. If you continue to think of yourself as success, you have a better chance of being successful in the future.
That's true. There's a lot of sayings in different cultures. You are what you think. To put it very simply. Right.
Absolutely. That was the Nightingale Conan. Actually, that's what The Secret's all about, right? The book, The Secret. You are what you think about. You're standing. You're standing on the fifth hole on a golf course. There's a sand trap in front of you, and you say, God, I really hope I don't get in the sand trap. I hope I don't get in the sand trap. I hope I don't get in the sand trap. Well, chances are you're going to get in the sand trap.
Yeah, exactly. If that's what's on your mind, that's where you're focusing, right? I do like the idea of volunteering, to help yourself grow. I think that's a really interesting point. By any chance, have you done that yourself? Like, did you do that? Or?
I have. I have. There's some great folks out there, great organizations out there that you can do it for. There's a national organization called SCORE in the U.S. where these are successful business people that volunteer and help other business people. Your skills are useful. And again, if you can feel successful, if you can feel like you're contributing, your chances of moving yourself to another emotional and physical place can really help.
So you could join, I know here I'm a member of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce here in Guelph, Ontario.
Right.
Participating there or even in the some of the industry groups like Business Continuity International and disaster recovery and things like that. Yeah, that's an interesting one because I hadn't really thought of volunteering as a way to help make yourself become resilient, but it really makes sense.
Well, you got to get out. You got to get out of the pity party, right? You got to get out of cheering the darkness. You got to move from a place where you feel bad. You have to give yourself another chance at success, and you'll only give yourself another chance at success if you feel that you have an opportunity, you're feeling better about yourself. And I think you can feel better about yourself by helping others. That's
true. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I hope all the listeners are capturing that one because I wouldn't have thought of that one. So let's move to the next point. In the book, you talk about accepting failure. What does this actually mean? And how do we accept failure? I know you hinted at it in the first segment, but I'd really like to deeper dive, so to speak.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people fail, they do one of two things. They either deny it or they blame somebody else. It's somebody else's fault. It's the market's fault. It's the customer's fault. It's whoever's fault it is. It just isn't my fault. I think that you always don't have to say, well, it's my fault, but I think you have to say, hey, this happened. We weren't successful. Here are the reasons why we weren't successful. What can we learn and what can we shift so we have another chance that we can get some success. I think that denial and not taking responsibility is not a good place to start. And again, unfortunately, at least in America, we have this culture because of our president who's always blaming somebody else. And I think that when things go wrong, I think people appreciate that. Well, this went wrong. We screwed up. This was my part in it. This was the other part in it. So I think that's where it starts.
So what would you suggest? Because I've had my share of failures too, but somebody who's really, consistently, I don't want to say consistently failing, but, not having success, and they're finding it difficult to, accept that it's not working out. What would you say to that person, in a situation like that?
I would say let's look at the track record. You've tried all these things, it hasn't worked out for whatever reason. It's time to try something else, right? And maybe you have more of a chance for that to work out, or try to find place in that person's life where they have been successful, and then you try to build on that.
So what are your feelings when an organization, you see them on newscasts and, they're saying, oh, this occurred here because of that, they start the blame game. What are your thoughts when other organizations start blaming other organizations who start blaming other people? That must create some sort of friction and compounds things, doesn't it?
I think so. I think it makes those people feel good, or it gives them some justification so they can deflect it. But I don't think it's really solving the problem. No, and I don't think it really moves organizations forward.
Well, it probably creates more problems, because now you've brought in, if you admit you've made a mistake, you're able to move on. People will hopefully forgive you and see what you're doing to move forward. But if you start blaming other people, they start getting angry at you, and now people are looking at them, and what may have been a small problem has now mushroomed.
And sometimes, Alex, you can't recover, right? You just can't, and then you just have to move on to something else.
Yes, yeah, that's true. I had my own share, like I said, of failures. When I wrote my first book, I thought it would be a fantastic idea to send a communication to all the Chamber of Commerce in Canada, with cards and announcing what I'd done, and, I was available to speak and everything. And it was about 300 different communications, and I got 0 responses. Boy, was I down in the dumps after that.
Yeah, no one cared. No one cared.
Exactly. But,
only you cared.
Yeah. But from there I learned, and bounced back and, wrote more books, and, now I've, got a radio show and, doing other things. So, I'm an example of that. And you at the beginning of the show are an example of that too. It can be done, by anybody.
I think that most people, if you really understand, their history, have had their ups and downs. One of the problems that we face is most people don't want to talk about their downs where they failed until they've had some success. So for example, it's very fashionable to someone who is a billionaire say, oh yeah, here's all my failures, right? But someone who's never financially succeeded in business, they're not going to talk about all their failures.
Right.
So what I don't like, Alex, is I don't really like the romanticizing of failure, because I think it just is. People fail. It's not good or bad. It just is. We have to learn what we can, let it go, and move on. But let's not romanticize failure and saying that failure is such a great thing. In America, they have something called FailCon, where people just go to the conference and talk about their failures and what they learned. And I'm not sure that we should spend that much time on it.
Well,
I think that we make up a justification. We make up a justification for the reason to make ourselves feel good. We make up a reason why we failed, and I'm not sure just making up a reason really helps us out.
That's interesting. I never heard of FailCon. You said?
Yeah, FailCon.
I'll have to look that up. I'll have to look that up just to see what that is. But yeah, I agree with you. Romanticizing, failure is kind of, I don't know. I just don't see it as anything valuable myself.
But it can get romanticized in our culture, especially after people have been successful. I remember watching a speaker, and she had become very successful. And she says, well, I grew up as a child prostitute and a cocaine addict. And the woman sitting next to me goes, God, I wish I grew up being a cocaine addict, right? Because they could come back from failure. So I think we got to be careful.
Yeah, that's not quite the way you want to do it. So, leading to our next point then, how does humility help us to move forward?
I think that humility is a really good skill to have, especially when you're successful. I mean, I think that it's easy to be humble when you failed, but to be humble when you succeeded, knowing that, listen, you got here because of the help of a lot of other people and probably your share of luck, and that at any point it could change. I think that really helps a lot. I think it helps you appreciate the success that you do have so you don't take it for granted.
Kind of you don't get anywhere alone. You need others around you.
Yeah, I mean, most people, believe that, except for the President of the United States, which always says that he alone can fix everything. But I think most business people will say that it is a team effort, and that if you're humble about it, that really helps appreciate what you got.
Well, that reminds me of something I remember hearing in my project management career path, where if there's a problem with the project, it's the project manager's fault. If the project succeeds, it's the team's. The team gets the credit.
Right.
It's not one person.
Right.
So the next part you had in your book that had a lot of information were the 10 building bands for true business confidence. I thought this was an interesting section. So let's get started there, see how far we get, and we'll probably carry that into the next segment. But I'm just wondering if you're able to speak to those.
I wrote the book a long time ago, so I don't really remember the order of them. So if you can bring up something to suggest, I can do that.
Well, you know what? I've got the book right beside me, so let me just see where that is, because I know it's around here somewhere. The 10 building. Oh, there we go.
I'm on book number 6, and this was book number 2. So I appreciate being interviewed about it because it's one of my favorites. Yes.
Well, like I said, this book actually really came in handy when I found it at the bookstore, and I thought, oh, this is kind of neat. And admittedly, I'd probably gone through one or two failures, and I thought, oh, this is good. It pumped me up and helped pull the socks up and get me out of the doldrums and move forward. So that's why I reached out when I was going through my bookshelf and went, hey, I want to talk to that person. So okay, so here we are. The 10 building bands of true business confidence. The first one was environment.
Yeah, I think that if you put yourself in the right environment, that really helps. And I think the right environment is really tricky because it's not to say, one of the problems with, I love how my parents brought me up, but my mother pretty much promised me that every year I'd get promoted, every year I'd be more successful, and that wasn't real life. So I think that if you can get exposed to an environment where you succeed and fail, that really helps a lot. That's why when one of my sons was very young, they were playing baseball and they weren't keeping score. And I'm like, well, why shouldn't we keep score? We should know who won and who lost, because being able to lose is just as important as being able to win. And the interesting part was the kids were keeping score, the adults weren't, but the kids know who won and lost.
I guess it's kind of in our nature then to figure that out or something, if the kids are keeping track.
Exactly. And so I think it's really important as you grow up to know what it feels like to win, know what it feels like to lose, and how do you transition through the two? Because sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, and how do we go from one to the other?
Mm-hmm. Are there any environments, I know you were mentioning environments that, enable you to succeed and learn failure as well. Are there any environments that, how do I say this, that aren't you wouldn't recommend type thing, whether it be a business environment or a personal environment, a home environment, anything?
I think that extreme environments on either side is no good. I mean, I think that people that grow up in a protected world of wealth and never really have to face the idea of failing because everyone around them is always supporting them, I think that's not good either. As well as someone that's in an environment where, they're homeless or are working at jobs where they can't make ends meet and they're filing for bankruptcy. I think those are hard too. I'm much more of a fan of the person that has gone through the difficult times, has come through the other end, than folks that have never, had to face it. I'm much more impressed by people that had to work while they went to school versus people like my children who were basically funded for a 4-year college degree and, didn't have to work while they were going to school.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've come to the end of our second segment. We are talking with Barry Moltz, the author of Bounce, and we'll be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.